Okay. So now we're going to talk about The Last of Us HBO show, our review of the show or spoiler discussion of the show. If you have not finished the show or if you care about spoilers, this is your chance to bow out now. You can leave the episode. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. All the stuff, subscribe, so on and so forth. If you're interested, if you finish the show and you want to have his discussion, jump on in, stick around. It's gonna be a fun one. Um, we might end up talking about some stuff related to The Last of Us Part Two, the game. If we do, of course,
Spoilers for part two as well.
yes. So
Uh,
I don't know how heavy we'll get into those spoilers, but when we're about to mention anything about that, we will clearly
we'll
say
say spoilers.
spoilers for Part Two. All right, but last chance, dip out now if you don't want to hear a spoiler discussion about the Last of Us HBO show. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Let's talk the Last of Us HBO show. This show, we talked about it a bit after the first episode aired. And just gave our initial impressions of, man, how we liking it, are we enjoying it, so on and so forth. Now that it's done, you for full transparency, Tyler, you haven't finished the last episode. You watched up to the giraffe part. You haven't seen past that, but you've played the first game. You know how it ends. And as I told you before the show,
Played the second as well, yeah. So I was out here giving theories about three. So yeah,
right,
I'm versed.
right. And as I told you before the show, the final episode is more or less exact, like from that point on, the giraffe point on, more or less exactly how the game goes. There's one scene is very different. It's does something that's not in the game. And then Joel and Marlene's dialogue in the hospital is slightly different. But other than that, it's basically exactly how the game went. So if you've seen if you know how the game ends, how that secret goes, you know how the episode goes. All that said, this was one hell of a show. Oh my
Very good.
God. I was blown away by it every single week.
I wouldn't say I was blown away by it every single week. It was very much it's interesting. It's kind of what I thought. It would be because listen, Pedro Pascal is the fucking man. Oberyn's my favorite Game of Thrones character. Did not have to convince me that he would be great. Of course he was. I also loved, I forget,
Bella Ramsey?
is it Liana? I forget her name, Liana. I think it's Liana something in Game of Thrones. I thought Bella Ramsey was fucking great there too. So I was like, hell yeah. I thought that was a fantastic casting. I thought they hit it out of the park before even seeing it. And it didn't take long to be like, yes, 100%. This was phenomenal. But I wouldn't say I think they took less storytelling liberties than I thought outside of episode 3. I know that there's some differences, so I don't need any dorks in here telling me oh, it's this or that. I get that there's small differences, but I thought maybe and I'm not saying I'm disappointed that they didn't do this. I was just interested to see one way or the other. I thought maybe they would take some huge swings potentially, story wise, maybe something small that became drastically big. And instead, I think they really focused on stuff that maybe didn't matter, that they could maybe extrapolate more from. But that being said, my favorite, we'll get into our favorite episode. For me, spoilers, it's 3. I think it's just the highlight of the season by far. It is emotionally wrenching. I definitely found myself tearing up at the end of that episode. That episode is so good.
Yeah.
Not that the other episodes are bad, but I played the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Revisiting, yes, those are great highs, but in order for me to truly be let's fucking go, I need something different a little bit. And so 3 for me was that moment of oh shit, they're cooking. I trusted them from that moment on to, if they did make a change, make it really count and make it impactful.
Right, right. I'll get into my favorite episodes in a little bit. I just want to stick a bit more right now and just kind of what worked for us with the show, what didn't really work for us overall. And I think, as you said, the casting, they did an amazing job with the casting across the board, with the main core cast of, Ellie and Joel, but then even the smaller supporting characters, such as gosh, I'm blanking on the woman's name when they were in Kansas City, but the woman who was the leader of the resistance group there, like I thought she did a great job with her role
Yeah, she
of
was great.
seeming like seeming soft and sweet on the outside, but being like, no, I will like real ruthless. Like once you get past that, she's like, telling the people, she's like, like you're all rats. Like she's sounding so soft, but there was like that sinister undertone underneath everything she's saying, where it's like, I can't trust you, but I want to. Something tells me I should, but I know I can't. Like she was great. And then just how they also cast the members, the people who play the characters in the game. So Troy Baker, Ashley Johnson, Jeffrey Pierce, Merle
Ashley Johnson
Dandridge.
being her mom was cool.
Right. Like I'm gonna get to that actually. I'm gonna get to that. But the way like they brought them into the show and the way that they killed it in each of their respective roles, like just I loved it. I loved that so much. Just the casting for sure. Um, and then the different changes that they made from the game to the show, whether it be small or big, I also really liked and appreciated. Like the way that they, one first off, just explaining the infection and how it started, how it spread. That's like a touch where it's like we didn't need it per se, but it helps flesh out the world. It helps, I guess it gives you more of a reason to care about finding a cure. It gives you more of a reason to get invested in Joel and Ellie's journey to potentially find a cure or make a cure for this. When you see, like, oh, yeah, like there are all these people that they knew before that got infected. Like, this is how it started off. And like, you see when the woman tells them in the beginning of episode 2, during the flashback when they bring the scientist in, and they're like, what do we have to do? And she says, bomb everything. Like it's too late at this point. And she's just like, just take me back to my family. Like I just want to be with them. And like it gives you something to be like, man, like in this moment, she already knew like everything was lost. And just to be
Yeah,
able
that was
to
crazy good.
right. And then just to be able to be like, all right, it gives you that investment into their story, to the journey of like, if we can find a cure to potentially get back to everything before that. And just like that's all like fill in the gaps in the game in your head however you want to, but having it there, that extra little bit, it's just a nice little touch. And the changes they made to the infected of the instead of the spores, it's the shroom, not the shrooms, the tendrils, the connections and everything, and how you step on one or you mess with a tendril somewhere, and like the hive mind just affects everyone all nearby. It's like changes like that, just like that's more of a major change, but I really, really liked how it was done for the show. It worked really well.
Yeah, so did I. I mean, it's interesting that kind of stuff. It does feel like maybe was underserved a little bit. Like we didn't really see the effect of that whole, the tendrils and them coming back quickly throughout really the rest of the season. Like rarely ever
Mm-hmm.
was that like a focal point. It felt like they made a big deal about it, and then it was just for that episode. Um,
Mm-hmm.
my biggest complaint would probably be season felt a little rushed towards the end. I haven't seen the whole last episode, but it is short. I know it's got a short runtime, and it feels like there could have been. And like I had never played Left Behind, interestingly enough.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the first one came out, I was broke, and so I did the old GameStop rent it for a week used and then return. Um, but yeah, like so that was interesting and I loved it. But it felt like we could have gotten a whole season even without Left Behind. So you would certainly have thought with it that we could have gotten 10 episodes. And it felt a little rushed, like pacing wise for me overall, the last like couple episodes. So I would have maybe liked and like but it's been so long since I played the first game that I'm a little fuzzy. I'm like, oh, what could we have added here? What would have been like a good from to pull from the game? Um, but small minor complaint. I do think this is like hands down the best video game adaptation ever put to screen. I don't even think that's really close. And like I said, I think they did. I think they made some really took some good liberties with what they changed.
Question, because I've seen people say that they felt that the show was rushed, whether it be the entire season or just parts of it and all. Um, what do you what what do you think made it feel like it was rushed for you, like near the end? Because I personally never felt like anything was rushed, and I saw some people say that they thought that the episode with David, in the winter section, they thought that that episode was rushed, but I
I
don't
Yeah,
think
that
it
was
was
what I
for
was going to
me.
jump to immediately. Was my first thought was that episode, second to last. It That is a not insignificant chunk of the game. And it feels like it naturally gets to build tension. And I think it felt like, okay, let's get the bullet points of what happens here out of the way without finding a replicate. Because, like, obviously, we don't have gameplay filler in that sense. So it seems like where they were at timeline wise at that point, script wise or whatever, that they were like, well, we're kind of at a satisfactory point, we think. So we'll just do the major bullet points instead of finding a way to replicate what would build that tension and maybe draw out the episode, maybe have it be an episode and a half's worth. Um, like I think that could have used a bit more because it felt like such a quick conflict to resolution endpoint that it just felt like it was wrapped up a little too neatly and like there wasn't time to like really chew on and like realize the ramifications of what's about to happen.
See, I didn't feel that way because again, like it's a key moment in the game. It's a significant section of the game, but it's also not a section that takes too long. Like I when I saw people say, man, they feel like it was rushed, it could have been 2 episodes. I wonder like what could have been added to it that wouldn't cause it to feel like it's dragging
Well,
on. You know what I
to be
mean?
clear, it's not our job to come up with that. Obviously, that's the job of a showrunner. But I do think it's a fair criticism to be like, the pace of this is off because, especially think about it. Think about how much they just fucking hung out in the first 2 episodes. Like, it's very, I would not call the pace of those 2 episodes brisk. I would say, like, the first half of the season felt drawn out and meticulous in like a way that I very much enjoyed, and it felt like they were rushing from story point to story point towards the end. And I assume most people complaining about the pace just wanted to soak everything in a bit more. The way, there's like scenes of them like reacting and being like intently hiding and things of that nature in the first half of the season. And like you obviously don't just want to run it back and do the exact same thing, otherwise it does start to feel a little too samey like a game. um Moment to moment. But yeah, I mean, that's their job. Obviously that's what they're getting paid to do, is adapt this. And it would have been nice to find a different way to replicate maybe a little bit of that like intentional filler where it's like there to amplify the tension. So you're starting to
Yeah.
feel like, oh shit, this is what could happen.
I get what you mean. I get what you mean. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, I got it. Speaking of something that was not really there in the show, but you have more of in the game was obviously the infected. And I wish, one thing I wish that they did more was that we got more infected because after after episode 5, when they're leaving Kansas City when the whole thing happens with Sam and Henry, after that episode, there's only, if I'm correct, actually 2 more infected in the entire show. One in the Left Behind episode, and then one oh my gosh, I know what it is. Oh, one when you see Ellie's mom. When I think those are the only 2 other infected we get after the whole thing with Sam and Henry. And I get why, you don't have as many infected, whether it be a budget thing, because you could tell they blew their budget for sure when they had that whole infected horde come out in that 5th episode and start like taking everyone down. Which, by the way, that was awesome. That was super cool. Loved seeing that
Yeah.
bloater come out and just straight up just start just ripping people and everything. Um, but so like I get that budget wise, and I imagine also, like you said, it might end up feeling a bit gamey to an extent, having like all these interactions with the infected, but not having them so much in the back half of the show, it did feel like something was missing, like a key part of the world was missing, not having them. It's like they're really heavy in the first half, and then it's more like, oh, the second half we're going to focus on the people instead, not have really many infected there. And I wish there was more infected. And I mean, they did say that there's going to be more in season 2, which is good. Uh, but I
Rat
wish
King,
that there was.
baby.
If it's in season 2, if
It's
not
gonna be
season 3, but that's going to be a
it's gonna be
doozy.
so horrifying, man.
That is going to be intense. Oh my god, I can't wait to see that one. See how they pull that off. Um, but another change that I actually liked was, and this is a, I guess you could say a minor one that is a major one, depending on how you want to look at it. I liked um Joel and Tommy. The conversation that like their relationship was great. It definitely conveyed, the relationship that they had in the games, the show really well. But I liked that conversation that Joel and Tommy have in the episode when when he's trying to fix his boot, he comes in and gives him a new shoe, and he's asking Tommy now to take Ellie, and it's like the payoff of the PTSD that we've been seeing Joel dealing with, and that one just added that PTSD element to the show was a great touch to add to further flesh out Joel's character and just add on to what we already know is there in the game, but it's not really touched on much of like how has he really dealt with the loss of Sarah? How is it still affecting him aside from just the factor of, man, I don't want to take her because she reminds me of Sarah. It's like, no, it's deeper than that. It's still like the loss of Sarah still affects him to this very day. And just that conversation of seeing Joel break down, be like, I still have nightmares and dreams and like of me just failing over and over and over again. And like, I'm afraid that I'm going to fail right now. Like, I can't go through it again. Like, I loved that conversation and just things like that throughout the show. Just the way they further fleshed out characters was so well done, whether it be with Joel and Tommy in that moment or with
Which is
Sam
gonna
and
be
Hen.
sick in season 2. The
I
payoff,
know,
people are gonna lose their minds.
I
Oh, it's
know.
gonna be good.
Or even like Sam and Henry fleshing them out, like making Henry deaf was a nice touch. Like
A
it wasn't
smart change, a
right,
very
it
smart
wasn't
change.
needed, but it was done really well, and it changes their dynamic and how it changes the responsibility that Sam himself feel no Henry, this responsibility that Henry feels for Sam. Like it heightens it all and just makes their dynamic so much more close and closely tight knit and everything. Like it was so good. Just all the dynamics and just the depth that all the characters were given. Loved it so much. And then we get to our favorite episodes now because that for damn sure was on display in episode 3. I don't know if that's my favorite episode, but it's up there as like it's a top 3 episode for me. That was a amazing episode. Just completely changing what we know about Bill and Frank from the game, and taking just like that one note of, oh, they were partners, but in the game they hated each other, or Frank hated Bill, and saying, no, we're gonna do something very different from that in the show. Still keep the core of who Bill is, but completely turn that story on its head and do it in a way that does their story justice and helps serve the bigger narrative, themes narratively as well for the show. But that episode was just like amazing. I want you to gush about it because I
Yeah.
know you said it's your number one.
Yeah, it's 100% my favorite episode. It's just, I mean, it is in a show all about ultimately, I think there are a lot of philosophical implications about The Last of Us. There's a lot of everything, but ultimately it comes down to like relationships, and not like even not necessarily in The Last of Us in general, not in romantic nature, because the apocalypse is kind of like the worst possible place. But that's what makes this episode special is, anyone that hates on this episode, I'm sorry. Well, I mean, even like, because I saw one weirdo on TikTok and people were roasting him, but there's just like, oh, I'm not homophobic. Even if you're not homophobic, you're a fucking dork, man. Like, do you just not like to be like, I don't like love stories. I'm here for the zombies. Like, yeah, okay, go watch literally the fucking Walking Dead, you weirdo. Like this game, this series is about so much more than that, and is about like just the human spirit in a lot of aspects, and the goods, the bads, the extremes of all that, and so much, and like that's all on display here. Like it is wonderful. It is like heartbreaking, but like in the best
Mhm.
kind of way. And it's just like the one optimistic. Like even when you get like, even if you're like me and you play the game where you're just like rushing forward and barely forward, Joel, to like ultimately because you you're like, I'll be damned if I let Ellie die, for these nerds. But but at the end of the like cure schmear, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm about to save her. But even if you play that way and you get the ending that ultimately you wanted, it's unfulfilling because there's like all this there's all this tension, Ellie doesn't know, and it's just like it's still not the way you want it. There's like no happy endings here other than Bill and Frank's, and it's wonderful and it's perfect. And the idea that you're like in this world of sorrow and misery. I wanted more sorrow and misery. I wanted it to be exactly like the game. Like, you suck, man. Like, they changed it to where one person gets like truly a happy, two people, get a truly happy ending. And it's perfect. And it's such a side, small step of the people. Like, I wanted to see Bill and Joel interact. You did. Like, who gives a shit if you didn't see the one scene you wanted in the game? Like, we got a billion better scenes in this episode. Like it's
Yeah.
just it's perfect. We got to see pre panty Bill here, where he's just who he is. He's the cranky introvert that is doomsday prepping.
Yeah.
And then we get to see like him change emotionally as a human and like what he becomes when he's no longer an incel. It's great, and he's a better person for it. And Nick Offerman is fantastic, and I forget the actor's name, but he was also in the White Lotus that plays Frank. He's phenomenal, like just truly, truly a wonderful episode. And also, I think the Joel interactions with Bill in this episode are like significantly better than the ones in the game.
Yeah, it was an amazing episode for sure. And I think, like I said, I don't know if it's my number one. It's definitely top three because my other two favorite episodes were the premiere. I thought the premiere was very, very
It
well
was very
done,
good, yeah.
very good. Like I think I said it when we first talked about that episode, but like the once they started in that episode, these once you get to the beginning of the game in that episode and all the way up to Sarah's death, like even though I knew what was gonna happen, I was still on the edge of my seat, heart pumping, because I was like, oh my gosh, how's it gonna go? How's it gonna go? How's it gonna go? And it was just done so freaking well. And then everything past that also done super well. But then surprisingly, also for me, one of my other favorite episodes, it's the top three here, was the Left Behind episode. Now, I didn't play Left Behind when
Oh,
it
it was
first came out.
phenomenal.
I didn't play Left Behind when it first came out. I played it for the first time when I played the remaster for my girlfriend a couple years ago. So I was like late to the party, but I knew how it went. I knew the story of Left Behind, but I was late to the party on it. Um, so getting it here, I was like, oh man, they're doing it so well. Getting a bit more backstory on Fedra and Ellie's life in Fedra, but then doing the whole Left Behind story was done. It was done so well that like when we got to the end and um she's sitting there with Riley, and they're both infected, and then Riley starts saying, saying her lines of like, all right, well, there's two ways I could see this going. We could do this or that. Like that whole interaction there, I legitimately started like I started watering up. It started tearing up because I was like, oh my god, like Storm Reed and Bella Ramsey killed it in that episode. Like the way they got you so invested in their relationship, their friendship in just an hour. You could buy into it so well. And then in that final conversation, your heart just breaks for the two of them in the same way it breaks for Bill and Frank at the beginning. Maybe in a different way, but your heart still breaks for them. Where it's like you guys just accepted that you all care about each other and love each other and want to stick together, and just had it ripped away from you in a moment's notice, just like that, just like utterly crushing. And it's one of those moments where I was like, man, all of this was done exactly like it was in the game. I feel like this was done even better than it was in the game. Like I enjoyed it more than I did the game version of it. And I think that's because, as I was telling my girlfriend this that same day, I think it works better in the show because you're in it. You're in the Riley Ellie flashback for the entirety of the episode. Whereas in the game, it's going back and forth between Ellie remembering the past and Ellie in the present skulking around the mall trying to find supplies for Joel. Whereas here, since you're just completely in the past, you're able to just sit with them for longer, enjoy that time together longer, and be in it on their own, as opposed to, like here in the show, you're only with Ellie in the present at the very beginning and the very end. That's it. and I just really enjoyed that episode. Like if that's not, I think that might be, actually, I don't know how I would rank that between that, the premiere, and the Bill and Frank episode. I don't know how I would rank those three because like they're all just so fantastic to me for like very different reasons, but just amazing adaptations all around.
Yeah, I as someone that has not played Left Behind, I thought it was phenomenal. Yeah, like you said, Riley and Ellie's relationship, both non-romantic and briefly romantic, which is just so heartbreaking at the end. And Craig Mazin talked about it, like we wanted to take it away, and it's like that makes sense. You understand why it can't work out, but that's what's so beautiful about getting Bill and Frank's episode earlier in the season. It just like enhances that as like truly the rarity that it is that so few people get to go out on their own terms, happy with the person that they love, and get to have this story and have these like first world issues of like we're arguing because of like dumb, ultimately like small things that like matter here in our world, but in the post apocalypse, like throw that shit out the window, not important. Um, so like yeah, and I think there's like elements of that reflected in this episode, but on a smaller scope and with obviously much younger kids that just like don't really understand. Well, they understand obviously what's going on in the world, but like they just get to have this moment where they don't have to care, and it's ultimately ruined by the carelessness. But it is wonderful, and it's also obviously got that pull in that touchstone to like our nostalgia and obviously just like having arcades, getting to like be in the mall with your friend, but in this like weird twisted way where it's completely separated from reality. But it's so nice to see Ellie get this moment of normalcy. Wonderful episode as well. It's probably, I mean, I don't know if it would be two for sure for me, but it's definitely like top three or four. So it's up there. Maybe it'd be two. I'd have to like watch. I have to finish this episode, the last episode, and then like really
Yeah.
think about how I feel about him. But it would be up there. It's probably like three or four worst case scenario. But like it's definitely it's an amazing episode.
Yeah. Final two things I want to talk about for this discussion, real quick, real briefly. Number one, Ellie's mom. So we kind of expected Ashley Johnson to play her mom, in some way, shape,
I
or
didn't,
form.
but
Okay,
I
well,
didn't know
I
they were going to
did.
be in it.
When they announced that she was in it, I was like, okay, like I expected her to be the mom. And then as we got to the series, I was like, we haven't seen her yet. So after the seventh episode, I was like, okay, I bet money. Here's what's gonna happen. Ellie, we're gonna see Ellie's mom in a flashback. She's gonna be pregnant, and I bet money what's gonna happen is she's going to get bit right as she gives birth to Ellie, and that's gonna be why Ellie's immune. I was like, I bet money that's gonna be the case, and that's exactly what happened. I was like so proud of myself for calling that a week in advance. I was like, props to you, Tyler. Props to you, Tyler. But no, yeah, she did that really well. And I mean, it changes things. It's like it adds a major dynamic shift or to the world. Like, oh, like that's how she's immune. Like she was bit, well, her mother was bit, but she kind of cut the cord, I guess, just in time or whatnot to make her not be infected. It's wild. It's a real major change. Um, no, don't know if you have any thoughts on that. But if you don't, we'll go into the last point.
Yeah, just a quick note of like, I don't know. I don't really like I would have been fine with the mystery of we don't know how Ellie got immune. That's all I'll say. Because like, okay, whatever. Like I guess I do like that it's not explicitly stated that like this is why. Like, I'm glad to hear that the scientists aren't like, oh, blah blah blah. This is clearly why. Like, but I would have been fine not like I would have been fine if we just didn't get a clear shot of whether or not she got but like bitten and we're like, oh, is it not, But because then it's like I'm sure we'll now have a million Reddit threads and videos where dorks are just like, this is the science behind and blah. I'm just like, I would have been totally fine not knowing for sure if she got bit, and this is like what's clearly leading to the immunity.
I would have been fine with it too, but I was like, I bet that's what's gonna happen, and it did.
Oh yeah, no, good call for sure. Yeah.
All right, final thing here. What are our hopes? You have any hopes or expectations for season two? Season two, or more so
I
season three as well, just like the rest of the show going
yeah,
forward.
I is 3 seasons too much? I think so. Or like 3 more seasons too much? I think so. I think two is the right call, but you probably fully flesh them out to 10 episode seasons. I think as much as you'll be tempted to, and I know there's already been like probably what 2-ish years uh between like the starting of filming Last of Us and now. So like Bella Ramsey's already aged up some, but I think don't change the cat. Like Bella's so perfect as it.
They already said
Keep
she's
her.
staying.
Oh, did they? Okay,
Yeah.
thank God. So I think that seals it. I think they have to let her age up. I think it makes sense. I said this when I did my spoiler cast for The Last of Us 2. I think there's a version of that story that you tell more straightforward that arguably ups the tension. You you lose getting blind spoilers for The Last of Us 2. You
Yes.
lose you lose the blindsidedness and that like that kind of reaction to Joel dying. But I think the trade-off of getting to know and appreciate Abby first in the anticipation and the dread that like she's coming for Joel, and obviously in the game we wouldn't have known if he for sure dies, but now we will. I think it adds it a whole extra layer. I think it'll be incredibly good. I think the payoff for going that route will be worth it. I'm just interested. I'm very interested to see who Abby ultimately gets cast as. I know there's been some like let's be real, the actor is not going to be as swole as Abby probably, because Abby's fucking ripped in the game. But I've seen some Florence Pugh fan casting, which would be pretty cool. Um, she doesn't look exactly the same, but I think Source or Sailors, I don't know how you pronounce her name, Ronan, aka
Yeah.
Lady Bird, and she's in a lot of Greta Gerwig stuff. I think she would be a phenomenal Abby. I don't think of anyone else. I don't know if you have any fan castings here
I
for
don't. I
Abby,
don't have a
but
single one.
but yeah, I'm very very interested. The one that would get people mad would probably be like Brie Larson, but I could see her being good. And
Mhm.
that's just because people don't like Captain Marvel. But Brie Larson, like go
She can
watch.
act.
Yeah, go watch. Damn it, I forget the name of it. Well, Room's good too, but also what should have won her Oscar for. I forget the name of it, but it's a pretty solid movie. But she's just like a powerhouse, and she is a phenomenal actress. She'd be pretty cool, but I wonder if they think she's too old in relation, like just age wise, where she'd line up with Abby.
Mhm.
So that'd be interesting. But yeah, I can't wait to see who that's gonna be. I think that's just as interesting for me as watching the show because I mean, I called this a while ago about season two splitting it and then or like part two splitting it, and I bet my life that they're gonna do the story that exact way.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to season two. Um, I don't know how it's gonna go. Like in terms of like how they split it, if they do the Abby stuff first and then the Ellie stuff second, I'm not sure. I think they might like they're definitely gonna take liberties with it, and I think we'll get more time with Abby before she kills Joel to make it that much more of a shock. They maybe they'll go the way where they wanted to originally in the game, where they originally wanted to like have her dance with Joel at the party the night before and everything, like show her in the town a bit more, and then like have the surprise later on. Maybe they'll do something like that. Who knows? I mean, that's the benefit of hindsight. You can now do things a different way for the show. Um, but it's going to be very interesting to see. One of my big hopes is that, of course, more infected. Very much looking forward to seeing more infected at all. But I think one of my like I don't know what I hope for the show. I hope that I think like for season two, season three, for basically adapting part two of the game, I hope that they're able to balance how complex that story is and how much bigger scale the story is. Like it's not like it's like such a vast story or anything. It's not like a God of War or Ragnarok type of scale increase or anything like that. But like it's like scale in terms of depth and complexity and characters. Like there's so much more to chew on and dig through and parse through.
Yeah,
And with
that
part two, with the like themes, narrative, all like that. Like it's a monster of a game to have to adapt to a different medium. So I'm hoping that they're able to balance it all and give everything the amount of time that it needs and deserves, and not rush through things like all the stuff with the scars and the wolves and stuff like that could be a season of its own in any other show. Like that's a whole lot there to dig into the stuff with Lev and Yara and Abby, like that's a whole lot to dig into. Everything post Seattle, like the time jump and stuff, like there's a lot going on in part 2. And I mean, I trust the team, Craig Mazin, Neil Druckmann, everyone, like they've clearly showed that they can do it with The Last of Us Part 1. Uh that was just, but that's a more straightforward narrative, more straightforward story. I trust them
It's so
though.
much easier to do.
Yeah, but I trust them with part 2. I trust that they can do it because they've showed that they can.
Yeah. I just think the most important part is going to be nailing the casting even more so than for the first season. Cuz
Yeah.
like whoever you cast as Abby needs to pull her weight, the Joel killing of like the range of emotion and what Abby goes through, but also like we all need to be emotionally, like I need everyone that didn't play the game to be emotionally devastated by that beach scene the way I was. Like that,
Mhm.
like it's gonna be Bella. Like we know Bella's gonna kill it. Like that scene, her like thinking of what she's gonna go through, like the actress and also just like the character and like how that'll look on screen in season 2 is gonna be so good because like just I mean we saw how well she portrayed the rage that is buried within Ellie, and it's times a billion in part 2. They said the first game was about love, the second game's about hate. Like, yeah, like it's wild, man. Like, I can't wait. And like again, all this is spoilers. When Tommy gets killed, man, people are gonna be like, "What?
Well, he
What
didn't.
the
He didn't
fuck
die.
is
He
going?"
didn't die. He lived.
Does he?
Yeah, he
Oh
lives.
man, I need to replay part 2.
No,
I
he
see. I don't
lives.
remember that. I
Sure.
swear, I thought he died.
He did not die. His eye got really messed up, but he lived. He lived through part 2. So yeah.
Lame. They should have killed Tommy. That'd have been more emotionally devastating.
Well, maybe you're thinking of the Asian friend. I forgot his name, but him he
Oh man,
died.
when he dies too.
Okay, well, I think we've exhausted all of our thoughts and everything on Last of Us, the HBO show. It was an awesome show, great one.